I see it.
Our guest has spent more than 30 years helping people build wealth. Along the way, he helped grow Reliant funding to $20 million in annual gross volume and has generated gross margins up to $388,000 on individual properties. Today, he's here to share how to build wealth through real estate without needing a huge amount of cash to get started. Welcome, Bryan Anderson. Thank you
Well,
for joining
thank you
me.
very much for having me. Hello.
What a pleasure. I was asked to sell real estate when I was younger. And I said to my uncle, I said, "Me, sell real estate?" He said, "Well, there's nothing else you can do. You don't have an education. You didn't finish school." He said, "You better learn to sell real estate." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because it's one of the last places on the planet where you can write your own paycheck."
That's right.
And that was 20 years ago. And he wasn't wrong. He was absolutely right. And I think today it's becoming more important.
It is. In fact, the divergence of net worth between a renter and a homeowner by the time they reach age 65 in the United States is a difference of 11,000 net worth to 500,000 net worth across the USA. In California, it's even more. It's 77,000 net worth for a renter, 1.5 million for a homeowner. So it's the greatest wealth building tool for middle class America.
Mm-hmm. I saw that you'd recently done a training on that, and I was doing the calculations on that graph, and there was a huge disparity. Everybody at the start looked like they were at the same starting line, and that gap just significantly grew, then compounded. And I could see that graph, 1.5 million and the other one, 77,000. That's a huge gap. That was a wake-up call.
Huge gap. Yeah. And I think a lot of people have misconceptions about what it means to really own a home. The reality is that we can't live in our stock portfolio, but a lot of people don't understand leverage. And I love that that's a word that you use, because leverage is something that a lot of younger people don't fully understand. For example, I had a conversation with a potential home buyer who was kind of debating whether or not he should invest in the stock market or if he should put it as a down payment on a home. And I said, well, talk to me about what's going on. He says, well, I'm paying $3,300 a month for rent in Murrieta. I can buy a house if I put $40,000 down. My monthly mortgage, principal, interest, tax, and everything will be about $3,200. So it's about the same, but then I lose the ability to put that $40,000 into the stock market. Well, the stock market, we're seeing a 10%, compounding interest return, and the appreciation on the property is only like 4%. So 10% is better than 4%, right? And I just smiled at him and I said, it's not about the rate of return. It's about the asset size. So when you take a $400,000 home, even at a 4% rate, year one, you've made $16,000. Year one in the stock market, if you take 40,000 times 10% is only 4,000. So exponentially over time, you can see that larger asset is, and using leverage is how the middle class have grown their wealth. You hear all these stories about how mom and dad bought their first house for 120,000 and now it's worth 900,000. Well, that's why, you know what I mean? But if you're going to be paying rent anyway, why not transition your rent dollars into an investment? And that's what I teach.
Fascinating. I think a lot of people, they give the wrong advice. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that around. When I bought my first property, my uncle said, just set and forget it. Buy it, make repayments, and just forget about it. Let it sit there. And I did that. I made my monthly repayments, came back a few years, and it was worth far more than when I started. Right. And by having that, it gave me more options. The option was, now that I've got one property, I can get my second one. And it was an easy upstart. And for me, what happened for me was I didn't have to really use any of my own money to begin. My uncle already had some other properties that were worth more. So we went to the bank and said, hey, look, we've got some security over here. Would you lend us some more? And the bank said, why not? Let's do it. Very easy way to raise and continue. What I would be interested to learn is, where did your journey start? How did you get into property?
Well, I'd love to say that I was brilliant and bold and daring and well capitalized and educated and all these great things, but that's not the truth. I was uh, working for Reliant Funding at the time as this company that basically funds business capital funding. And so we worked with a lot of flippers, we worked with a lot of different investors, we worked with a lot of business owners, and we were doing loans that were very short term, very much like a hard money loan. And when COVID hit in March, May, somewhere in there in 2020, the business shut down because we were giving loans based on their current cash flow. Well, cash flow ended for anyone that was non essential. And so, with my back up against the wall, I took a look at my situation and I was able to secure a work from home job. I didn't pay quite as much, but from Oceanside to La Jolla is about an hour and a half commute in each direction with traffic. So there's 3 hours a day that I won back by working from home. And I decided to use those hours to do something a little bit different. Now, my background, I was a mortgage loan originator back in 2002. I went through the hard time in '07, '08 when the bubble burst. But I've been in mortgage loan origination, subprime lending, business funding. I've been in the finance world and in C-suite roles like VP of inside sales, head of sales, director of sales development. I mean, I was working with companies that were doing 90 million a year in gross volume. The one that you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, took it from 60 to 90 million a year in just my first year without increasing any of the marketing or even the headcount. And it's because I knew how to scale. So for me, when I took a step back, unemployed in the beginning of 2020, I thought, well, what can I do that will help? And I came to the realization in that moment. It was kind of an epiphany. With I've spent my entire career, over 30 years, helping other people get wealthy, and yet I hadn't done it for myself. I already knew how. I just needed to get out of my own way and let go of the fear. And so I got a work from home job. I bought a home with a traditional loan. It was a home that was what we call a cosmetic flip, basically just a little outdated. Was actually in pretty darn good condition, but it had some issues. The seller was up against the wall. He tried to FISBO it, tried to for sale by owner. He already had another home in Florida that he already purchased. His job was moving him. He had to leave in like 2 weeks, and he hadn't sold the home. And so when we approached him about it, he was happy to give me a deal. Like I picked up the home for 942. And when I got into the house, 942,000. I'm in Mission Viejo, working out of one of the bedrooms. And during my lunch breaks, I was entertaining contractors to do some of the light work. I did all the interior painting myself and a lot of the landscaping myself. About 6 months later, we looked around at the market and we saw that, and we knew this going into it, that if the house would be worth 1.2 after it was fixed up. Surprisingly, with the little elbow grease, it only took about 30 grand to fix it up. But we decided for tax purposes in California, we should probably wait till 12 months because taxes, federal tax, you get kind of a break. It's an exemption. Married, I get to write off, whatever that net increase is going to be. So at 12 months, you get a drop from regular earned income down to 20% in United States. You drop down to zero if you've held it for 2 years. But the market shifted in our favor, and the demand for pool homes in Mission Viejo skyrocketed. So we turned around and listed it for 1.3, sold for 1.36. Now that's a $388,000 hit that I would have missed out on if I just kept renting. And the amount that I was paying in my mortgage payment, because it was a primary residence loan, was actually the exact same amount of money that I was paying for the rental that I moved out of in order to buy that home. And so I thought, well, this is brilliant. I learned a couple of things in there. I could have, would have, should have got a Fannie Mae home style or a Freddie Mac choice renovation loan with a down payment assistance program. There's over 300 of them available in California. So they would have given me the house with no money out of pocket. My monthly payment would have been roughly what I would have been paying for rent. Instead, I cashed a little bit of my modest 401k to put a down payment on. I didn't have to do that knowing what I know now. But, picked up the house, lived in it for 6 months, made 388,000. I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this again. And so 9 houses later, my son reached out to me and he said, "Yeah, but that's because you're in California. You can't do that anywhere in any other market." So my wife and I, just to prove the theory, flew to Colorado Springs, found an agent off of Zillow, coached the agent on what to do to make the offer, bought a house for 480, put 30 grand in it, sold it for 610. So I'm getting really good at figuring out how to find these properties, and where the opportunities are, and getting the financing to do it using only what I was paying in rent. But after my first one, I stopped using my money. I started using everybody else's money, and that's really how this all started.
Wow. Well, one of the principles of leverage is to leverage other people's money,
That's
and
right.
that's important. And the other one is to leverage other people's knowledge. And if
Yes.
you've done it once and you've done it twice, that's a pattern. And if you've done it 9 times, there's the recipe.
Yeah. Well, and what's crazy is in California, there are other markets where you know, you work just as hard. So the amount of work that I did in Colorado Springs was just as much work and I only kept that house for 6 months because it's such a much lower amount and wasn't as much capital gains tax. But the same exact amount of work, I only made 100,000 on one house. I made 388,000 on another house. My average is around 160,000. So in high cost markets, it's actually easier because the margins are bigger, the margins are wider, the spread is bigger in California. So when people say, "Well, you can't do it in a high cost market," I'm thinking that's the best way to exponentially grow. So only 9 houses in, my wife and I have accumulated $1.8 million dollars, and we no longer have to go to work. We just don't go to work anymore. So that's when I decided I'm going to write a book, uh, you know, because I want to help people. And I made a promise to a contractor that was, going backwards a little bit, one of my earlier flips. I explained to him my live in flip method, the idea of getting a traditional loan instead of a hard money loan, and getting a down payment assistance program, and getting all of these different things that were available. They're all available to all of us. Most people just don't know they exist. You
Mm.
know what I mean? So, like San Diego, down payment assistance will pay up to 22% of your down payment and another 4% up to 10 grand of closing costs. You just qualify. You just have to qualify. You just have to go in there. And everybody thinks, "Oh, that's for first time home buyers, or it's for, people with low income." You can go up to 120% of the area median income. So for a family of four, you can make 150,000 and still get 100% financing on a loan that is designed to pay for your purchase and the renovation all in one loan. And so you're basically, if you do what I do, you buy a house on like the 5th or the 10th is your closing date. You have 50 days before your first payments due. So before you move out of your previous home or your rental or wherever you're from, you run in and get the major renovation completely done before you move in. Now you move into a property with tons of equity as your primary residence with a mortgage payment similar to what you were paying in rent with no money out of pocket. And all you got to do is satisfy the down payment assistance requirement of staying in the home for 12 months. You can even just turn around and DSCR it and rent it out to somebody else and go do it again. There's so many different ways to do it, but most people just don't know. So anyway, I was telling this contractor about, my live and flip strategy. And he says, "Bryan, there's so many people out there in the world, including me, that didn't know that any of these things exist. There's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines thinking that, you know, owning a home is become an impossible reality, that you're stuck being a renter for the rest of their lives. You need to teach this to people." And I said, "I'll tell you what, once I hit my number, I'm going to write a book. I promise you." So this is actually just me keeping that promise.
What a journey. What a journey.
Yeah.
I'm thinking here, you've accumulated a lot of money through these properties. How long does it take the average person to put $160,000 worth of savings into their savings account? How long does that take the average person?
Well, I'm not discounting that you should stop doing that. What my process is it's not extra money. I'm teaching people how, instead of paying rent to a landlord, use that rent
Mm.
money and transition that into holding costs where you're literally moving into it. If you have more money to invest and put it in the stock market, that's great. But let's go back to the original plan. If you put $40,000 into the stock market with a 10% return, in 10 years, you'll have $86,000, right? Now, if you put $40,000 down on a $400,000 home with a 4% rate of return, In 10 years, you'll have $313,000 in equity. On top of that, you're going to pay down the principal another $80,000, even though it's the beginning of the amortization schedule. Uh, so you're walking into, 400 grand. Meanwhile, the renter has seen a 3% increase in his rent every year for those 10 years. Now he's paying 4,500 a month, and he's stuck doing absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, the other person has built all this wealth doing nothing but living in their investment. So
Mm.
I'm sorry if I answered the question differently than you expected, but for me, uh, you can dump a lot of money into the stock market. You can, and you can cross your fingers, and maybe you get lucky and you buy a moonshot like Nvidia or something that takes off. But the reality is that the uh, home appreciation since World War One has consistently gone up. I think the average in the United States is about 463,000. Well, in California, it's closer to a million. It's going to continue go up. There was one blip in 2008, but I was a mortgage broker at the time, and I can tell you, we gave anybody a loan, 100%, loan to value with a stated income on an option arm, 1% negative amortization. Nobody could refinance without bringing money to closing. We're not in that same situation. So investing in real estate is the safest way to grow your wealth. It's also the only hedge that I know of, leverage against a volatile stock market. If the stocks drop 30%, that doesn't mean the home value drops 30%. People have to live somewhere. And that is the key, is taking your rent money and converting it into holding costs.
Mm. Mm. In Australia this week, they just announced that for the first time in a long time, that more than 55% of the average Australian's take-home pay goes to funding the house or
Right.
for the rent. It's a huge amount. And a lot of Australians at the moment, they might only have about $50 a day play money. So if they've got $50 extra a day that they can put aside, and they're trying to put aside $160,000 in the bank, in their savings account, it's going to take them forever. It's going to take
Oh,
them a
yeah.
lifetime to get there. So this is a much faster way, and it gives you so many more options.
It's crazy to come up with 1.8 in a 6-year period, just changing my primary address.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And leveraging other people's money and leveraging the asset. The most unique situation is that with a home, you're sitting in equity almost immediately if you play your cards right, right? So the place that I'm in right now is a beachfront condo. I bought it for 1.25. It was a mess. It was a cosmetic flip. I put 35 grand into it while my wife was renting downstairs. So I was coming up every day. We rented a short term, right? I came upstairs every day and I was managing the contractors and doing the painting and that kind of thing. In 50 days, we moved in. We had it immediately reappraised for 1.415, which is 130,000 in forced equity. So I used that forced equity, got a home equity line of credit. So I have a primary residence loan. Then I qualified for a home equity line of credit. I pulled out 100,000 and I put it as a down payment on a golf view home at the Havens Country Club. Also a flip, but now I'm using that as, I'm not moving into that one because I've got some assets. And this is not something I would encourage someone to just starting. You need to have some reserves before you start doing vacant flipping. But I got a hard money loan. I wrote it for myself. I'm now a real estate agent and as well as a mortgage loan originator. So I represent myself. I write my own contract. I negotiate. I actually get paid commission by the seller to buy my own home. So I buy this house. I write my hard money loan. We put about 250 grand into this one. We're talking a brand new cement tile roof all the way down to new floors and everything. It was a full gut remodel. It's now worth 1.25. Got another $140,000 in forced equity. Put a renter in there with a DSCR loan. So I'm using all the loans. I've got a primary residence. I've got a home equity line of credit for my primary. I got a fix and flip hard money loan that I paid off with a DSCR loan and put a renter in there. And now I've got two properties that are appreciating at about 4 to 8% annually in one of the hottest markets in North America. And it's all using other people's money, starting by only using what I was paying in rent. So when you
Mm.
access or tap the equity in your primary residence, that money's just sitting there. That's just equity sitting in your house doing nothing for you. That's the best time to pull it out if you know what to do with it. If you pull out some money, put it in an investment that's going to bring you long-term wealth and maybe even short-term cash flow, Why would you not do that? And I think that that is the key of leverage is, you know, starting with nothing, and paying rent somewhere and turning that into 1.8 in 6 years. And I'm just a regular guy. Now, during that time period, I got my real estate agent license because I got tired of coaching real estate agents how to negotiate on my behalf. So I just said, this is ridiculous. I'm going to write it for myself. And there's a kicker because now I'm getting commission to buy a house. And then when it's time to sell it, I'm the listing agent and people are coming into an open house and they're going, I'm unrepresented. Now I'm going to do a dual agent because in California, you can represent both the buyer and the seller. So I'm not giving away any more money. So as you establish more leverage, you start to figure out different ways to make sure that you're getting all the juice out of every single deal. And when you're dealing with a market like where the homes are $1 million, 3% to a buyer or a seller agent is $30,000. If you can eliminate both the buyer and the seller agent and then actually get paid when you buy the house, like I got paid to buy the house and then I, saved myself all of those fees in selling the house. So it's all about leverage. And that's really what I want to help people get to is understanding how to use leverage to make it work. I've even volunteered my time. I don't know if you saw it on my website, but I'm volunteering my time for Colorado high schools and public schools for next year to go in and actually teach in their financial literacy class. It's now become a requirement to graduate that you get to spend a certain amount of credit hours to understand the basics and the fundamentals. And in the process of doing that, the goal is to go in there and give them an opportunity to decide, make choices with the amount of money. Would they invest it in the stock market? And then let's play it out over 10 years and see who wins. Because I think a lot of people have this misconception that housing is unaffordable and it's better to invest in stock market. There's so many gurus out there like Ramit on the street telling people don't buy a house, just rent. And all of these reasons why, renting is the most you'll ever pay and owning is the least you'll ever pay. I get all that, but guys, if I can make 1.8 in 6 years, I'm just a regular guy. Why wouldn't you just want to jump in on this opportunity to take money that is available in down payment assistance, money that's available in an agency rehab loan, a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac agency rehab loan, live in your flip. Yeah, you're going to have to move around a little bit, but after 5 years, you get to live at the beach.
It's worth it.
Yep.
There's a lot of money there. There's a lot of incentives available. Could you help us understand why these institutions want to give away this money? Because a lot of people think, I can't get the money, the banks are stingy. They want to give it away. What's the reason? What's the reward for them?
Well, this is government money. Listen to me. There's 300 down payment assistance programs actively running in California right now. These are government-funded organizations. They are trying to help people get into home ownership. In fact, there's a website, Fannie Mae has a website called the First Look Home Path website, where they will not allow investors to bid on a property for 30 days to give special preference to primary residence buyers. So you don't even have to compete with the flippers. But the other thing is that, the goal is to help. They recognize that one of the big wealth builders is equity. And so by helping people get into a home, and start building that wealth, the dependence on the government becomes less and less because now they're sitting on $350,000 in equity and they can tap into that with a home equity line of credit. So if you look at why is, San Diego County offering all of these different programs, why are they doing it in a deferred interest payment, meaning that you don't make a payment on that down payment assistance until you refinance or sell the home? So you don't even have to make a payment. There's some called the ZIP or zero interest payment, meaning that when you do sell the home, you only pay back exactly what you borrowed. There are other ones that are called grants where you stay in the house for at least 2 years. You don't have to pay back anything. It's just gifted to you. So again, the dependence on the government to try to support you, is eliminated when somebody's sitting in that kind of wealth. Let's face it, when do people go and apply for food stamps and disability and all these different things? It's because they're in a spot. They don't have access to capital. It's not as simple as they can just sell their home. But for those people who have that kind of equity, that's all they have. They can go ahead and sell their home. They get a home equity line of credit. They have all kinds of opportunities. So I think that as long as the government and as long as the cities that are offering these down payment assistance programs, why not capitalize on it? And I think it's important for your listeners to know also that most people think that these are designed for just first time home buyers, but they're not. So GSFA in California is will pay up to 10% of your closing cost or 10% of your purchase amount, and you don't have to be a first time home buyer. But a first time home buyer is, that pays 17 to 22% of your down payment with San Diego down payment assistance. You'll go up to 130% of the area median income. So it's not like it's just for poor people, and it's not just for those type of people. The other thing to remember is that if you've not been on title on a home for at least 3 years, you're considered a first-time home buyer in the US. If you are married to
Interesting.
somebody who is on title, you're on title, but you are married, and now you've gotten divorced and you're a single mom, you now qualify as a first time home buyer, even though you were on title 6 months ago. So there are a lot of exceptions. I think that most people just don't know what prompt to ask Chat GPT. Like nobody knows how to type in, hey, is there a loan program where I can only spend my rent money and yet buy a house that is 750,000 in California without a penny out of my own pocket? Is there such a loan program? Is there a down payment assistance program available to me to do that? They have just been told enough times that you can't have that. It's out of
Mm,
reach. And that's just not true.
mm. That's why leverage is important. You've got to leverage other people's knowledge because we're all ignorant. We all don't know what we don't know. And if these things
Absolutely.
are available, it's just a matter of asking the right questions. But you've got to have guidance. These are the questions you should be asking in this order and the sequence. That's important. When it comes to these banks and institutions, what do and what don't they care about? Because when people are going and applying for a job, there's so many things that an employer cares about. And oftentimes, most people never meet the benchmark. These institutions, do they care about your education? Do they care about what age you finish school? Do they care about your sexual preference? What do and don't they care about?
That's a great question. They don't care about anything except for your ability to repay. So, the agency loans, we're going to talk about three different kinds of loans really quick. Agency loans are your traditional loans that you've used to hearing about that you go to the bank, you bring your W 2s and your pay stubs, and you prove that you've been at the job for 2 years, and they pull your credit and they've got a FICO score and a debt to income ratio, and you have all of the things that you're familiar with, right? That is because the bank wants to sell that paper, but they can't sell it if Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA say, nope, we're not going to touch that paper. That doesn't fit inside of the guidelines. So then we go to non QM. I can't tell you how many times I've helped somebody get a loan when they've been declined by their bank. If you go to a mortgage broker, you're going to find lower interest rates. You're going to have access to hundreds and hundreds of different non QM programs, which means they don't limit you on your debt to income ratio as much. Their ability to see your income is a little bit different from W 2s. Now, most of the business owners that we talk about, and you're one of them and I'm one of them, all of our income doesn't show up on a W 2 or a 1099. It's not pretty and clean on the tax returns. We take advantage of every deduction that we can get, right? So on paper, I don't make a whole lot of money. I'm not going to pay taxes on a whole lot of money, but I still have income. So non-QM will look at business or personal bank statements to determine your income. There's asset utilization loans that'll take a look at your savings. So for 401k money, they'll take 70% of that. And for IRA money, they'll take 100% of that. They'll take that number and divide it by 60. And they'll say that's how much income. So if you've got $1 million and, well, let's just say even $500,000 in savings, in a non-QM loan, that's $9,400 in income is how they translate it to qualify you for a loan. Then we get into hard money, and at those, they don't care at all about you. And you have to have a minimum FICO. I think it's 620 these days. You'll get a better deal if you get higher FICO. 720 is where the cream is. But they don't really care about anything except for the deal. So this is called asset-based lending, where they look at the ARV or after repair value of what that house is going to be worth once you're done remodeling it. So if you can buy it for 800,000 right now, it's going to be worth 1.2 when you're done, and it needs a $100,000 rehab. Then they say, okay, I tell you what, you give me 10% of the purchase price, give me $80,000 in closing, so you're going to end up at 90, 95 grand. And let me see that you have 6 months worth of assets so that you can still pay the bills during those 6 months before you list it, right? Okay, I got that. So you send them your Charles Schwab account, your mutual funds account. You put them $90,000. They're going to pay the rest of the finance to purchase and 100% of the renovation. 100%. So now you've got your money down. They've got a licensed, bonded, and insured contractor that submits the bid. The work gets done, and then they cut a check to that contractor in up to 11 phases. They could care less. So the answer to the question is depends on the loan. Are you going to get the lowest possible interest rate loan and live in the property? Here's one rate. Here's the traditional loans. Any other kind of income, hard to prove income? Is it asset based? Is it, we're looking at your how much money you have in savings? Are we looking at the value of the property after it's done getting remodeled? And then my favorite, which is the DSCR. This is debt service coverage ratio, is similar to, I mean, it's considered a non-QM loan, but what they do is they look at the projected rent of that property, whether it's a Airbnb short-term or a long-term rental. How much money can you get in rent from that? If the cost of your new interest-only 40-year payment, principal, tax, insurance, association fees, whatever, if your cost of holding is less than what you can rent it for, we'll give you a loan. And so it really comes down to understanding the different tools. There's a reason for all of these different loans, and what they care about is different based on their ability to get it back. There's a low risk for them because if you don't make a payment, they get the house that's been completely remodeled, right? So, I mean, there's different ways for them to win. And that's really all it comes down to is understanding that you can walk into your bank and get a hard no and pick up the phone and call me or another mortgage broker, and we will find you a loan.
So they're assessing risk.
That's it.
If we lend you money, can you pay it back? Everything else is off the table. They don't care about it.
Right.
What about mortgage brokers? A lot of people are afraid to ask for help because of human fears. They fear being taken advantage of. They fear rejection or they fear ridicule. What doesn't a mortgage broker care about? What are they not judging you on?
So it's interesting. A mortgage broker is your partner. Now, remember, they get paid commission to do the job. But one thing that most people don't understand is my mortgage brokerage. There's 150 different lenders. They are all competing for my business, all of them. I get probably 100 emails a day. They all want my business. And so they're competing with the lower rates. A bank, on the other hand, they have a set rate built in that pays the salary of the person that you're going to go apply for, whether you get the loan or not. And they want to sell that loan as quickly as possible to to get rid of it, get it off their plate so they can loan more money. When you're dealing with a mortgage broker, they're in the game with you. And if you find a good mortgage broker, like I said, just in the last year, I've had 4 different type of loans on these 2 properties, right? You got to get a mortgage broker that can do more than just a traditional loan and a HELOC. You got to get somebody who can give you a hard money fix and flip loan and a DSCR loan and can bump and move with you. And they can look at your financial situation. They can look at your assets. They can look at all of the different things and help you with ideas and decisions. I can't tell you how many times people have come to me and said, Bryan, I want to buy this house. We just retired. We're just on Social Security. My wife and I combined make $4,200 a month. We don't qualify. Now, we've got $2 million in retirement funds, but we don't qualify for a traditional loan. And they're completely unaware. I mean, we're like 67 years old. You went through the entire life. You've never heard of an asset utilization loan. So it really is like, this is your partner. So what I try to teach and what I try to coach is there are people that you're going to need on your team to help you. You don't have to be an expert in loans. What you need is a mortgage broker that is an expert in loans. You don't have to know where all the good deals are. I wouldn't work with a wholesaler if you paid me. They are unlicensed, unrepresented, there's no laws, no code of ethics. But there are so many real estate agents who have their finger on the pulse of every distressed property about to hit the market that can help you get a property, that can negotiate on your behalf. So what I do is I coach people, listen, you don't have to know it all. I don't want you to have to learn everything there is to learn, but here's how you find the right people, whether it's title and escrow or mortgage broker or real estate agent or whoever you need on your team in order to get that deal done, including your contractors. Where do you find them? And that's what I try to help people get, because I'm never going to be an expert. I'm never going to be a general contractor. I got guys. I know a roofer. You know what I mean? So that's the way you have to look at mortgage brokers. Think of them as your roofer. Think of them as your contractor. Think of them as when something's wrong in the house, we can handle some minor things, right? We might
Mm.
climb under the sink with a wrench and try to attack a plumbing issue. But when something major is happening, it's out of our wheelhouse, what do? We call an expert. That's all I'm asking you to do with the mortgage brokers, call an expert. They have access to all of the loans. There's nothing to be afraid of. If it's like talking to a doctor when he tells you to put on this little gurney dress, right? Man, they've already seen it all. Trust me when I say I have seen every possible financial situation out there. It's confidential. No one's going to judge you. We want to help you win. Because if we help you get one deal done and it's profitable, guess what? The average investor gets 7 loans in the same time period that a primary residence homeowner that is not an investor gets in that same time period. So we make friends with an investor and we help coach them and get them going. We're writing loan after loan after loan after loan. You're like bread and butter to us. So forget the fear. If anything, the fear is on my side. How do I make sure that you can trust me with my knowledge that I can help you get where you need to go? Think of it like that.
For somebody who's thinking about doing this, but they still haven't pulled the trigger, what are some of those human emotions that prevent them from taking the next step?
Well, any kind of real estate is emotional. There's no doubt about that, right? I mean, when you're sitting in a rental house and your back's up against the wall and you just lost your job and the next one starts and it's going to be a work from home job and you're in a tiny little condo and it doesn't have air conditioning because it's by the beach, there's no way you can work from home. Your back's up against the wall. That's when the fear usually leaves. When people are back up against the wall, that's when they decide, I'm going to go all in. That's exactly what happened to me. I can't push anyone. I'm not going to force anyone to do it, but I tell you, there are so many people who, once they learn more about the process, once they get some hands-on experience, even if it's not their own, the fear starts to go away. The imposter syndrome starts to go away. And so visiting different real estate investment team get-togethers, there's meetups, there's Facebook groups, there's all kinds of groups where the people get together and talk about their latest deals. I mean, Bigger Pockets has a bazillion people on there. And I mean, it's just, there are a lot of people that are doing this. In fact, 90% of all rental properties in the United States are owned by mom and pop shop investors that own between 1 and 5 properties. They all had to overcome their fear at some point. What you should be fearing is the fact that if you're sitting there renting right now and you are not seeing any equity, there is no reduction of a principal. There's no way out of it and your rent keeps going up over and over and over. That's what you should be worried about is your rent increases are going to outrun your income increases. It's time to take massive action. And so what I do when someone is in that spot where they're struggling emotionally with getting ready for it is I show them, here's a property that costs the same amount of money as what you're currently paying in rent. Here's a down payment assistance program that you're going to take a 90-minute listen to. You have to watch this 90-minute video. They're going to give you your 10% down. You're not going to bring any money out of pocket. You're going to buy this fixer, and they're going to appoint to you a HUD counselor to help you with renovation, to negotiate with contractors, to get the bids that you need. And you're going to do everything for you. You're going to walk into a turnkey home with tons of equity and literally have all the time in the world paying just what you're currently paying in rent. Once they see that and they believe it, but they have to go on and after I tell them to go in and Google and Chat GPT and is there a Freddie Mac Choice renovation loan? Is there a down payment assistance program that's available for me? Is this real? Because I think a lot of people have this stuck, their fear of making a mistake. And quite frankly, that's why you have a mortgage broker who's done it before, a real estate agent that's done it before, contractor that's done it before. And if you've never flipped a home before, they'll even appoint a HUD counselor to help you do that. I don't know how it could possibly get any easier.
What an incredible time to live in.
Yeah.
Bryan, thank you for sharing your journey and your insights. For people who would like to learn more about the next steps and what you do, where should they go? Where should they connect with you?
Well, you can join me on my website. It's bryantherealestateguy.com, spelled with a Y, Bryan. I did put together a book, and again, I'm not selling coaching programs. I'm not trying to get a lead gen program or anything, but you can download the ebook for $10. You can buy the paperback for 20. It has everything you need to get started. And if you're in California, Southern California, like San Diego County area, and you want somebody who is a real estate agent, a lender, and an investor to help you go and actually get it done, pick up the phone and give me a call.
Bryan, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My friend,